Hi, I'm Kerry Cunningham, and welcome to Lies My Marketing Experience Told Me. This is a video series where B2B go-to-market luminaries tell us about things that they used to believe are true, but which they know are not true anymore. And we're doing this series because all of us who've been around for a while in B2B can look back on plenty of things that we used to think were true. We were absolutely sure it was true, but which we know are not true anymore and probably never were true. So if you're an industry veteran, you'll undoubtedly recognize yourself in many of these lies. If you're relatively new to the industry, then this series could save you a lot of time. People have been down a lot of paths before and can help you understand what is and isn't true and why it isn't. And pick up a lot of pearls of wisdom. So without further ado, I want to introduce to you Andrew Hausegger. Andrew is the founder, principal for an agency in Melbourne, Australia called Green Hat. Andrew is one of my favorite people in B2B, smart, funny, been around for a while, has some great insight and really worth understanding. And particularly if you're in the APAC region, he knows really everything there is to know about B2B go-to-market in that region. But I think everybody will enjoy it. So I hope you enjoy the episode and we'll see you at the end. Welcome to another episode of Lies My Marketing Experience Told Me. And I'm really excited to have my friend Andrew Hausegger. I've had a chance to do a bunch of stuff with Andrew, and I'm excited to learn what Andrew used to think was true, but knows isn't anymore. What lies your marketing experience has told you?
Well, thanks for inviting me, Kerry. I'm excited to have a bit of a chat to you about this.
Yeah, so let's hear it. What's your lie?
Well, firstly, I'm thinking rather than call it a lie, I'm going to call it a myth.
Okay, I like that.
I don't believe anyone has deliberately been going around telling me lies. I hope. Firstly, second, I couldn't land on one. I tried, so
Yeah.
I'm just going to do. There's a little preamble of things that bother me around myths, and I'll touch on those, and then and I've landed on two, which I think, and I actually have spoken to a couple of other people about, who've been. I've been in B2B for, I guess 25 years, so I've seen a lot of things. I've spoken to a couple of other people, so what have you seen as well? So let me start. So the first myth, you might call it, I call it myth, was that the buying process is linear. So we've all been around that circle. It's really chaotic. We know that, and and we've got big buying parties, and we have consensus buying and stop starts and blah blah blah. And actually wrote a blog a while back, and I remember having a picture of a bowl of spaghetti. I said, that's what it really looks like. It's like all over the place. Having said that, at the end of the day, the buying parties do have that. They build awareness, they build consideration, and they go into a decision. But trying to map that out in some sort of methodical way for us marketers. So that's the second one is that that marketing generates leads.
Mm.
And
yeah, so I want to probably dwell on that one a little bit, but let's just for the first one, let's pause for a second because I want to know, I think we all started our careers with that idea that the buying process was linear, or at least we operated under that belief without maybe thinking very much about it for a while. Do you remember at all when it occurred to you that, oh no, this is kind of bullshit and we need to rethink this? Or was it a process over time?
It was probably more over time, but it was we lean a lot into analytics, and I guess what you're looking for is, we built our top of funnel, content and messaging, and you're looking for the consumption of that, and then they've consumed that. So now I send them an email, which is my consideration email in my nurture stream, and I'll send them 3 of those, and I'm sure they'll get into that, and then they'll go into decision. So where it started, then it was over a period, say. Actually, they read the awareness blog. Why aren't they looking at the consideration video? Or, and it was becoming consistently broken.
Yeah,
and that's when you sit back and say, hold on, it's not working like this. And particularly through research recently, but we've known for a long time, there's multiple buyers and people are sharing information internally, and people are moving at different speeds. So it wasn't a wake up one Monday morning and saying, oh, I just realized something.
Yeah,
it didn't work.
A lot of times, the lies, the myths that people are telling me about, they existed because that was the story they were getting from the technology that was available. Sometimes from the process, but sometimes from the technology. Was there some of that involved in that, or was it just?
Yeah, very true. Because you think about, particularly when automation came in, and we thought, oh, this is the way we'll do it now. And if you remember, and they're there today, the workflow canvases, and you draw the boxes at the top, and say this is where they'll enter, and then you've got the diamond. Did they go left or right? And then they go left. So that's linear.
Yeah.
So we were using technology that was built by technologists. Someone's got on a whiteboard and said it goes like this, and I go, and what happens next? Goes there. Oh, then we'll do a diamond, and then we'll do a decision point, and we'll.
Yeah.
So the technology was leading us down that track.
Yeah, and it's not a bad. So this is one thing I see a lot is like it's not a bad idea to have content for people at different stages of their thinking. Like there's nothing wrong with that, and we have to think in that way if we're going to put it all together. But the mistake is then applying that to what the buyer's going through and not realizing they don't care about our process and they don't necessarily go through this thing linearly. So I think we confuse our process for thinking it through and creating content in that with a buyer's process for how they do things. And, as you said, it's like the spaghetti bowl. We're just way more random, than,
Yeah. And that's why, we start to lean into understanding customers' journeys. They're really important, and the personas and the roles that people are playing in those. So, and that's a break point, because you say I've got this linear thing going here. Still, the journeys you'll draw out the journey, it'll look linear, but if you really start to ask more of the questions around the buying process and the committee and who's involved in what parts of the process and so on, you can see that this is a complicated process, particularly as the investment value goes up. And you can see people coming into this with different agendas and different levels of understanding and different interest in levels of understanding. So some people want to know about the detail of the solution fit. Other people don't care a heck about that. So they don't follow any of that kind of process. They might be coming in the back part of the journey just to look at the financial, ROI. It's different. So it's complex.
It is. Yeah. I think it's a really good one. It's very simple, but it's a really good one because I think almost everybody who's been in the business for a little while has been subject to that and still thinks that way a lot. So that's an important one. Thank you for that. I'm going to call it a lie. It's a lie our technology was telling us. Let's say that.
The second one I was going to say was about marketing generates leads. And it's really market captures leads. And we both know the 95-5 rule, whether it's 90-10 or 85-15, or it doesn't matter necessarily. Depends on, a bunch of parts of the buying process in your particular world. But there are people out there who you're not going to generate demand. You might be able to get a bit of awareness if they are somewhere in their cycle, but their business generates demand. You can't go out and run a campaign that somebody sees and thinks, I'm going to create a project that's going to spend $1 million because this is an important thing to do. Now, it doesn't happen like that. It's what's driving within the business, not what's coming from the outside. It's an inside-out thing, not an outside thing, if you know what I mean. So that's we've got lots of people in demand generation and so on, but that's a problem.
Yeah, in the last 20 years, I'd say that's one of the most pervasive, dangerous lies we've been told. Because we've got a whole thing called demand generation, or if it's not called that, it's called demand creation. And we don't. Just as you're saying, you're not creating the demand. You can capture your share of it. I'll throw this one out you about this because I have thought a little bit about this. Like I think in B2B, especially over the last 15, 20 years, it's become so dominated, not in revenue terms, but just in terms of the volume and what we see in the world by SaaS companies. And SaaS companies, a lot of times, are starting from nothing. They're starting from scratch. They've got a new category. and they get their first customers and get to unicorn status or whatever by actually creating demand for something, like in a sense, that they've got a new category of solution. Their founders and their funders and the people who are starting that company, they work the market. They develop the first few customers. Nobody's ever bought a thing like this before. And it does seem like they're creating demand. As you were saying a second ago, if that demand, if the business need isn't there and the desire to address this business need isn't there in a set of companies, you're not going to. I mean, I suppose you could fool somebody into buying it, but probably not, right? You're not going to convince people to spend a ton of money.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a business problem, and some people in that buying group have been given the job to go out and find what a solution could be. So you're not creating the demand. You're now the SaaS company might have created a new product for a category, and if they've done a good job with respect to their content strategy, they're found, and their SEO and so on, they're found. So they didn't create it. It was created with inside the business, but so the challenge is capture. I've got to understand where to put the breadcrumbs down, what the channels that are going to be used, what type of content, all of that. So if you get that right, then you capture. And yes, you're a new category, so then there's obviously education goes on that. So you just have to have a good strategy around, hey, this new problem, we have a new way to solve that business problem that you generated, because it was generated by you inside your business with your market.
Way back in the very early in my career, one of the first jobs I had with a software company was a company that this was back when the way that companies updated software on their computers. What companies had to do back then was, if you want to update the software on computers, you had to go around with floppy disks and stick them into all of the computers. And if you have 1,000 computers, you got to update that way. That takes months to get people. You got to have people fly around to the remote offices, and so people weren't on the same versions of applications, and things broke. So this company that I ended up doing work for, they created the first electronic software distribution thing that could update software over a network, right?
Exciting.
Yeah. Nobody was doing it at the time, and nobody had ever thought of doing it, right? You didn't, people were solving the problem of updating software by having some guy go around to everybody's desk. So we had to call them and say, hey, all that money you're spending trying to get things, and all of the money that gets spent because people can't use their computers because they're not up to date and all of that. How about if you take a couple $100,000 of those dollars and you hand them to us, and then we'll fix all of that by, updating. And that's not easy, but and that's what seems like you're creating the demand for that. You're not creating it. The demand is there. You have to name it. You have to have them see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if it doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's right. So that, and I remember the scenario you're talking about, and that's a serious, particularly in big businesses, a serious, a big IT problem. But the problem exists. It existed already. So, like I say, it was that's a smart solution to it. Now I need to make sure I get those people who have identified the problem get to see my solution, because that'll be an easy sell. And that would have been
once
an
you
easy
get there,
sell,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
But it takes a long time to get that process to help to have those companies realize that this is a problem we're solving, that you should take money from one place and spend it in another place, right? All of that takes time, and it requires marketing, PR, sales, all of those things. But to your point, you're not creating that.
Yeah. And if there is a place of some generation of demand, it is in that new category. But the problem's there. And I understand why people would put put that argument up to say we have generated the demand. I'd call it more about their position themselves in front of a business problem in a new way. So you could work on semantics around that, but really, generally, 90% and 95% of the time, our game now is about capturing it and trying to use, we are able to do. We're more empowered now over the last 5 years with the first, second, third party intent data and so on to allow us to give us tools to actually do some more of that.
Yeah, no, that's great. Was there any point in time where you?
I'll have to go. I'll have to go a bit quicker because. But
gotta jump. Okay, that's fine.
The other thought, and we don't have to labour this, was this thing about sales and marketing. I wrote sales and marketing. The myth was well, you could take it two ways. You could say sales and marketing are not aligned. You could say that that's a myth. That's actually not a myth. That's not a lie. But the myth could be that sales and marketing will never align. And this has been a perennial problem. And, we've been doing research for a long time. And often the headline was sales and marketing. Organizations would sit down, you'd go and ask them and say, are you aligned, and try and give a definition of that. And half of them would say, yeah, we are strategically aligned. And then you go and look at data points about lead process, lead management processes, or definition of an MQL, or definition of an ICP. You're looking for the data points to validate that you are aligned. Simple things, and they're not there. Yeah. Those results are continually poor. However, the myth saying that they can never be aligned is not true. Things are improving, and the opportunity for we B2B marketers is to firstly understand how we can solve how we can address B2B marketing in a modern, more effective way, and two, take the sales org and the C-suite on the journey with us. And if we can do that, and the number of times I've seen the senior CROs and sales leaders in a room where we've sat down and talked about how marketing's going to move from breakfast and brochures to this new model, and this is how we're going to be able to help, and we can start to talk about precision targeting, etc. Those people leaning in to say, I want to learn more, I want to know more, because I've got a big challenge out there. I'm up against stiff competition, and I'm doing it the same way I was doing it 10, 20 years ago. But you're talking to me about this is talking to the marketer. You're talking to me about something new. So there's opportunity, but still there is a big gap, a big chasm in a lot of organisations between these two areas.
Yeah, that's a good one too. So that's three.
That's three. Then the last two. These are the last. These are, I'm going to call them. These are my high profile lies or myths, and where I couldn't split them. The first one is that buyers buy rationally, not emotionally. That's a hot topic, right? So, and we've been unpacking the buying party with you, and in particular, and I must admit, I go back a long time, and I go back a while, and I was very rational in my thinking. Am I thinking about how the buyers are addressing this, and as you know, there's a lot of short-term activation in B2B organisations, and not a lot of long-term thinking, which is the build of brand reputation. But we sit back now and look at this buying group and the vastness of it, and we break the buyers into these two groups. What we call or I call the solution buyers and the safety buyers. And the solution buyers, those people are they're the more rational thinking people. They're the people saying, this is a business problem. Here's my checklist of 40 items. I've got to find solutions to tick all that off. And they're kind of devoid of emotion to it. The safety buyers are thinking about their reputation. They're thinking about risk. It's more about, how do I feel about this brand? How do I feel about pinning my personal brand onto this organisation, into it? Do I feel comfortable? Is it safe, etc.? So
it'd be great if the emotional buyers if it were a positive emotion, like I'm attracted to this brand, I really want to do business. But I think you're right. Yeah. Most of the emotional side of it is fear of the bad thing that might happen if you make the wrong decision.
Yes, but that's still a feeling. So
yeah, totally.
It's you have positive and negative feeling. it's more powerful than probably the thinking about
so.
the joyous world that I'm going to end up in. It's more about, I want to make sure that I look good out of this and that I'm not taking the business down a rat hole that's going to cost them money, and et cetera, et cetera. And then you have this great term, the personal brand. So I actually want a promotion. I actually want that next job. I want, it's, what my personal brand in this decision, and that's an emotion. That's how I'm feeling about that. So it's right in there. And the challenge is now I've got to think about branding. I think I've got to think about my insights, understanding, connecting that with my message, all these sort of things that are not necessarily tied to short-term activation. I've got the salespeople, so I've got a quota for the quarter. If these things are separate. So the myth that they buy rationally is wrong. So that's a lie. I'll call it a lie. But the last one is this is probably a favourite, and it's a favourite of mine too, is that you measure marketing's worth through MQLs.
Oh yeah,
and that'll get plenty of a mention in your little series here. And the problem we know, and I'll try and keep it summarised simple, is that it's not an indicator of intent to buy. Now, I appreciate people define MQLs in different ways. Yes, if I fill in a contact us form, and that's the only way I call an MQL, that's not bad. That's not bad. Yeah. But most people don't do it that way because they'll get a small number of contact us forms filled in a week or a month. So they find other ways to call things MQLs, and then the story. So one that, and then there's this thing about MQL respect, or lack of respect. The value of an MQL over the last 10 years has diminished. It's you get less of them. They mean less. Sales don't care a shit about them. So, and we continue on, and you and I know big organisations where you go in and they talk about this metric. It's on the table as part of the monthly reports that are sitting around. So that's a big problem. And then the other part, obviously, MQL is about the individual, and we're much more interested in the buying party, and we want to see rather than one person going deep into a funnel, we want to see three people at the top of it. Is a much better outcome because now I'm getting better traction. And then we got to think about if I'm not going to do MQLs, then I've got to move on. Then that's another whole subject about what am I going to measure. But that's a myth that definitely needs to be squashed.
Yeah, the other element to that is timing. Those MQLs almost certainly come. If you're going to ever engage with them, it's because they're already at the end of their buying process. They've already decided whether you're on the list and where you are on that list, and that's the only reason they're now engaging with you. So your ability to sell is really over at that point. When you follow up on MQL and they talk to you, that person has probably already decided whether you're going to win or not. That person and their buying group. So it's not only not a great indication, it's not a great indication because most of them you never get a hold of. Exactly. They're not in market. But the ones that you do, it's too late, right? Harvest those, but you're not changing any outcomes at that point. Not many anyway.
Yeah. But we know there needs to be measurement. I mean, the marketing has to be accountable. Can't be not accountable for anything, right? So it needs to be measured. And so areas such as, if we move away from that share of search, engagement, marketing qualified accounts, so the group, and then going on to pipeline uplift. They'd be four areas that I think they're the things that we should be focusing on more, and a lot more meaningful in an organisation to the worth around the worth of marketing than an MQL.
Yeah, those are great.
So that's
people have been lying to you.
I've been on the back end of a fair number of lies. I was going to say a fair bit of bullshit, but
we can say that here. Thanks again to Andrew Hausegger for taking the time to spend with us all the way from Melbourne and talk about lessons that he's learned throughout his career. Great conversation. We hope you've enjoyed the episode, and please do check out the rest of the episodes in the series, plus the rest of the content we have at sixsense.com/science of B2B, and you just put hyphens in between the words science of and B2B. All right, we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, everybody.